There are fears of widespread COVID outbreaks in a remote Northern Territory indigenous community after 2 people tested positive to the virus. A 72-hour lockdown has been put in place in Katherine, and the remote community of Robinson River has authorities beginning mass testing operations. The threat to vulnerable people is real. People are living in overcrowded homes, and a high proportion of the population is not eligible for a vaccine. It's thought that around half of the 350-member community at Robinson River are aged under 12, making them currently ineligible to get vaccinated. Matt Cunningham joins us live from the Northern Territory. Matt, what's the latest and how concerned are people?
Well, I think we saw from that Snap news conference that was called by the Chief Minister last night that authorities are extremely concerned about the situation that's developing here in the Northern Territory. At that news conference, it was reported there were 2 new cases of COVID-19, a 43-year-old Aboriginal man and a 30-year-old Aboriginal woman. Now, they both contracted the virus in the town of Katherine, but the 30-year-old woman has then flown to Robinson River. It's understood she was infectious in that community for about 4 days before she tested positive yesterday. Here's the Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, speaking at that news conference last night.
This is undoubtedly the most serious update I've had to give you since the start of the pandemic because it involves a case in a remote community. But we are very prepared for this.
Now, the Northern Territory had managed to keep the virus out of its remote communities since the beginning of last year when this pandemic began. But this is a real game changer in many ways, Laura. Those authorities have now rushed to the community of Robinson River. There's about 350 people who live there, and mass testing and vaccination efforts are underway. An interesting point that you raised in your intro there about the number of people who are below the age that can receive the vaccine in Robinson River. The official figures show that it has a double vaccination rate of more than 70%, but its median age in Robinson River is just 23. That gives you an indication of how many children live in that community, and as we know, many of those children unable to be vaccinated. The Chief Health Officer, Charles Payne, speaking last night, said he had real concerns about the potential for a serious outbreak here in Robinson River.
In terms of my confidence, we can't be absolutely confident. The only way we can be confident of tracking this down is if everybody cooperates to the full extent with the restrictions we're putting in place and, as I've said, comes forward to get tested and to get vaccinated. We're in a very challenging time, there's no question about that, and I wouldn't want anyone in the Territory to be under any illusions that we are now in a fight to get on top of this.
Serious concerns indeed raised there by Charles Payne. There will be a 72-hour lockdown in place for both Katherine and Robinson River. We are expecting an update from authorities at around lunchtime today, Laura, where we will learn if there have been any more cases.
OK, Matt, lunchtime we'll get that update, but certainly there are concerns. I'm assuming this is the Delta variant as well, and we know that once it gets into a household, usually every member of that household does eventually get the virus. And this is what we're talking about here. People within one household, I think there was 7, and this is a tight-knit community.
Well, there were 7 in that house, which was in Katherine East. So obviously there's a lot of movement from people from remote communities into the major centres. So these people who've tested positive both have links to Robinson River, even though the man was now living in Katherine. We believe the woman was a resident of Robinson River. She travelled into Katherine. There were 7 people living in that house in Katherine. The woman has then returned to Robinson River. Of course, overcrowding will also be an issue in Robinson River. We don't know where in Robinson River the woman has been living, but there's every chance that she was sharing a home there with several other people. So, you know, that'll be the first effort from authorities today to try and get in contact with everyone she was living with in that community, get them tested and get as many people vaccinated, as we say, as possible. I mean, the good news is that the vaccination rates among the adult population in Robinson River are pretty high compared to the low vaccination rates we see in other communities. But there is still a lot of work to be done before authorities can get on top of this particular outbreak.